Welcome, everybody, to the 10 features of the Lightning Inspector. Sorry for starting a little late. Technical difficulties. I'm Chris Gray. I'm the creator of the Lightning Inspector. I've done most of this work, but we've had some helping hands from others in the audience as well. The top 10, I basically picked my 5 favorite top 10. Some of these we will actually be presenting here because we released a new version of the inspector this morning. So awesome. Some of these you'll never see before, and we hope they really help you guys develop on your Lightning platform since I was also previously on the Aura framework, which is obviously what Lightning's based on, and I really love this framework, and I just want to see it fly. So I really want to encourage you guys. I know I don't see a lot of laptops, but this is the link. Try to remember it. You can follow along. Everything we're talking about here is released already. So if you want to pop over this link, install it, takes about 10 seconds. Log into your app, takes about another 10 seconds. You can follow along with the features that we're talking about. I am going to try to do a demo as much as I can here, as long as the laptop works with me. And so let's get going. Obviously, the two of the biggest issues, Lightning development. I'm working on one of the others. If you just saw the Lightning Component Builder, the IDE, that's one of the other ones I'm working on. But for runtime in particular, component debugging is particularly hard. Runtime, we don't expose a lot of information to you, and that's obviously what the inspector is really good at. And then the performance of your components. A lot of stuff is happening under the covers on the server. We're going to give you a little bit more information on what's going on under the covers so you can tell where your hotspots are. The other one being off by 1 errors. I know I said these are 2, but hopefully this will work in your favor. But if it doesn't, well, I can't do much about it. No secrets here. These are the 10. These are what we're going to talk about. I'm going to take the first 5 here in a chunk, and they're really related to each other. A lot of times, this is the component tree stuff. This is some of the more complex stuff that we released. So let's tackle these first 5. So you're in your Aura component. I'm going to bust over to this guy. Going to make it bigger here. What is that? One of these buttons makes it bigger. Oh, wow. Oh, there we go. So we're in here. This is just an Aura application I wrote. Really does nothing special. All it does is go to the server, return some stuff in an Aura iteration, and shows you that on the page. I go in here. I have a Lightning component. In a more complex application, this might be a lot more of an issue to figure out where did this component come from. In my large component stack, I really don't know what element this relates to in my application. Well, if you come in here, span this guy. I think we make it bigger too. So now I have the element here in my inspector. I come over here. There's a Lightning tab, and it's going to give me all the information now on the component that I just clicked on. Your components that you write do not have an element on the page. If you write a component that has one div, then you're going to see one div on the page, but that is not your component. That is simply the Aura HTML component that you used. So here, my component spit out an LI. And which one did it? Well, the demo application did. I should probably have the dev console open here, but forgot to get it open. But here you can see I have an input. It's also in my demo application. I have an H2. It's also in my demo application. Really easy to be able to see the information for your guy and kind of cruise through here and see what this relates to. On the flip side, if you have, here's my slide explaining that, but I demoed instead. If you have your application and you're like, what component does this do? What component is this? I don't really want to go and inspect it. I just want to see what component this is on the page. Something in 1.app, there can be 1,000 components on there. It can be really hard to figure out. For that, we have this right-click, inspect Lightning component. You come over here. We'll pop open the Lightning tab. And let's do it again. I don't have the ability to launch this thing myself. So you'll have to inspect it, and it is not, in fact, highlighting. Evil. So since we pushed a demo release this morning, that should have worked. And in fact, I've discovered a bug. Tomorrow that will work, and that will highlight the component that you right-clicked on, which in fact should have been this A link. That'll highlight. You get the same panel on the right, figuring out what kind of information you have, and you'll be able to dig into it further. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Excellent. Inspect. Highlights, as the demo did not do. Moving on. In this case, you have a little bit of lightning trickery. This v.title. As you can see, there's one up top. There's a title up here. There's also a title here. Which one does this relate to? What are you going to see? Are you going to see top 10 Lightning and Components inspectors? Is the demo inspector? And this is where value providers come in. In this case, we have two titles. You can see it both, which is which. Well, if you click on it, you'll see that you're going to get on the sidebar an instance of, click on v.title. On the sidebar here, you see c.demo component as the attribute value provider. We really should do a whole session on value providers, I know. But really, it says simply, this expression, where does it get its value from? The value provider says, well, it gets it from c.demo component. The value providers, if you can start reading them and understanding them, is going to give you a lot of insight into the expressions of your application, the power of your application, where your facets are coming from, iterations. They're one of the most powerful concepts of Aura that we're surfacing here in the inspector. Let's see, we'll go back to the slides, but I know the next one is, okay, now that I have this component, how do I see more information about it, right? Well, I can go into the tree and find it, or I can I can click on it here, or you can click on it wherever you see these links on the right, and you double-click it, and it jumps there. And then you can double-click it, and it jumps there again. And the benefits of this is not just this tree, because we have a simple, rather, tree structure here, but anywhere in the inspector that you see these component tabs, you're going to be able to click and come back to the component tree and really get a feel of where you are. Particularly powerful in the events where all these events are happening and you're curious, who fired this and why did they do it? You double-click on the component, you come over to the component tree, and you'll see where it is in this vast tree structure of something like one.app. Maybe at the end, I can pull up what one.app looks like, because it's rather complex. So let's navigate to component. You can see we jump right to it. All right, now that I got my component reference, let's look at the code, right? Well, as you guys know right now, all the components are in this one big app.js file. Really hard to find where these things are and what you're doing. The inspector helps with that quite a bit. If you click on here, we have this on-click on the right. And underneath it, we have this ugly little $ thing. But basically, every time you see a C.dot reference, you can click on this to go straight to the code. We click that. There we are. We can set a breakpoint. We'll come back. We're broke, right? Using the inspector, we can easily jump around, debug our application. Again, particularly useful for events, where they're going to be showing who handled what event, who fired what event. You could jump to the code, repeat it, debug it. These are just some of my tricks that, there's a component tree. I don't need to talk to you a lot about the component tree. But using and jumping around and really inspecting your application with these little tricks really helps me in particular debug my application. So that's us jumping to the code. Lastly, for this, as we were clicking around in the Lightning tab, we clicked on dev component. We come into the console, and we get this Saura Temp variable, which is the last thing we clicked on. We clicked on a demo component. We clicked on an input. And from there, we can start accessing the API, get attribute value provider, which we saw is the demo application. But this is a quick, easy way for me to get an instance of my component or a component I'm referencing, and then interact with it, test with it, debug with it. And it's not just in the component tree. If you see a component and you click on it, so all I did was single click, then you get the same thing. and it's C demo application because I clicked here. So everywhere you single click, you're going to get that Aura temp. All right. So that was an off by 1 error. Those are the top 6, in my opinion. I particularly like those, and they really helped me get going. But now the last 4 here, they're really going to help me with the performance side. Events. Events happen a lot. We fire events for Aura methods, Aura value changes. We fire just excessive amounts of Auras. And so you can see that in here I have this Aura method call. I've got another method call. And so it's kind of tracking my events that I'm going to fire for my application or my component. It gets overwhelming. In particular, I have this list state change event. And this happened to me a lot when I was pre-inspector. I would hover something or click something, and then something there would change, which I wanted, and then something over here would change completely too, and I'm like, I have no idea why that happens. Now, we have this call stack. You can see exactly why this event got fired, who fired it, and who handled it. Obviously, like I said before, you can double-click on the component tags to see where they are in the component tree. You can click those C-dot references to go to the function definitions for them in the JavaScript, the event log. We record some stuff. Let's refresh. There's not that many events in here, but so you can see we can walk it around. In fact, we don't have much at all, do we? And if we had some chaining of events, which I should set up, you can click these, and they'll navigate through the event log. And so let's go back to the demo. And so if you wanted to see some information on the first event, you just click on it in the table row. It'll take you back to the first one. And you can kind of see what the attributes are, why it got, because usually we show you who fired the function, what attributes were set on it, that kind of information. And this will really help you debug the event chain itself. But in this particular instance, even though we're showing the current one as the list state change event, this was not the end of this event, right? All I can show you at this point is how we got to this particular event. For the next bit of information, you really need the log graph, which has been in there a little bit, but we worked on a little bit more. And this shows you that this list state change event is really in the middle of this event spidering tree. And you can see that if we want to, we can jump down to this method called it called a controller action, which called a method, which got handled by that. So I can go down my tree and see what happened, or I can see that the guy above me got handled by 4 different events. And that's why this section over here probably changed, as well as this section over here. Some of these can get really complex. I took this one from 1.app, which I don't mean to harp on 1.app. It's pretty amazing underneath the covers, but it does quite a bit. And so in this case, we were updating a data source. All I did was refresh the grid. It got new data. It fired an event. It said, I'm providing you more data. It went to the iteration. It rendered all its items. Each cell was a component. It rendered all its items. And you can see that it generated this massive tree, which you can dig around in and have all kinds of fun with. But hopefully, you don't have a bug in that section. We are now localized for the inspector in French, Spanish, German, Italian, and Japanese. So if your cultural language settings are any of those, and when you install the inspector, you'll get localized labels. I'm particularly learning French, so I chose French here. But if you have another language you want this translated in, you're probably not understanding me now, but tell me. We have links for the community in our inspector. Just go on there, comment. It's really not a problem, I think, to get this translated into anything else. Like I said, this is available now, so let anyone know that needs localization to update. Well, it auto-updates. So the last one is, why is my component slow? There could be several reasons, and obviously, it's not going to be easy finding out why. But one of the ones, component creation, creating components is slow. For that, we have the Performance tab. It tells you which components you're creating, which components it created, how long each one took. But the other portion that we really haven't surfaced a lot is what happens on the server. We're still dependent very much on Apex. You still need to use that to leverage, to make all your server calls. And so you can't really look at an XHR or an HTTP request and figure out what's going on, since we'll take 4 of these Apex calls, bundle them up into an XHR, send them off to the server. For that, we have this Transactions tab. All this data is being handled internally already, so we figured it was a great opportunity to get this surfaced. Every time now you make an XHR call, whoops, you're going to, let's attach you. There we go. You're going to get more calls here. You're just going to see them all. I've attached this button to just make 2 calls to the server via Apex. And you can see that. Now we're going to push back out. That it made a get feature call and a get accounts. 2 simple Apex methods. And on this graph, we're showing you a little bit of information about the tree and when they happened. My first call was 0 seconds ago. 192 seconds later, I made some more calls. In particular, I feel like we have a lot more we can do here. But in the meantime, I think one of the coolest things we've added is that you can click on these, either the HTTP requests or the individual calls, and you'll get a table. And in this table, we show you a little bit about the total time, the information, but you'll also see what's actually going on the server. Here I'm making my Apex call, Dreamforce list. It took 0 time. Excellent. But anything more expensive, which I didn't do an expensive one, but if I did, you'll start to see that we do some work, we do some statistics, and then we do a get feature list, and we do some more work. If any of these are expensive, if the get Oracle statistics was 200 milliseconds, you'd probably wonder what the heck we're doing wrong. If your Apex query was 300 milliseconds, you know exactly what's going on. You know which action is the problem, and you know which one to optimize. It looks like number 3 here is my Apex Siri call. You can see that it's got all this information in here. Eventually, this will make its way visualized into the inspector itself. We're kind of cheating to use some console tools and APIs just to get it to you as quick as possible. Let's see what we got here. Back to the presentation. Transactions tab. So if you forget all this stuff, I kind of talked fast. This is going to be on our public dev external documentation for the inspector, which is already out, but it will be updated this week and go out next week. So next week, you'll get all this stuff in the inspector documentation. But if you can remember this link, right? This is the one I put up ahead. And then if you can just remember that, if you don't remember this thing, you can Google the Salesforce Lightning Inspector, Salesforce plugin, et cetera, et cetera. You should be able to get to it. Then we have this drop-down in there. And the first link is now going to be the documentation for the inspector itself. And then you also get a bunch of other stuff in here that is really helpful. The inspector community posts there. I will always answer. The Dev Center, which is obviously a really good resource, since I know you're writing Lightning components. You probably need some of the stuff anyway. And it's all going to be there just in this drop-down. If you want anything else in this list, again, I can add it in about 5 minutes. So just talk to me in this Salesforce Inspector community, and we'll get it done. Those are 10-ish features, some of my favorites. Obviously, I didn't talk about the Actions panel at all. I didn't talk about the Performance panel at all. They're fantastic things, but I really think just kind of having some of the inside tricks helps out. And that's it. Thank you. If you guys have any feedback, any features you want, anything to help you debug, if you have a problem and you don't even know what the solution is, I would love to hear it. And I will either fix it for you or I will talk to someone of the framework guys who know how to do it. So if you have questions, go for it. I think I got 10 minutes. Thank you. Which one? Aura Temp. Aura Temp is it's just a way to get a reference to my component. If you go back, let's see, how do I go? Let's see how far back I can go. So here you got There's a global ID up here on the right, you can see, which is a unique identifier for this component I've clicked on here. What you can do is you can do $a.get component, and you could get that thing in code. And then if you wanted to, say, update the use page transactions to false in code just to see what happens, barring some access check issues, you might want to do that and just see what happens. Or maybe you as a debugging tool. And so instead of having to get that ID and type in there and all this stuff, you can just click on it, do our temp, and reference it directly. So it's just a shortcut for one of the many ways. The inspector does like 5% trickery, 95% clean APIs that you could use otherwise to figure out everything you need. So I'm not using anything that's special. So anything else? Yeah. Lightning out. See, so. The big knock I always get on this thing is that you'll go to a page and the Lightning tab will not show up. And people are like, this thing's completely broken. And in Lightning Out, it's a particularly bad problem with that because I need to inject a script on the page to make myself work. It's just kind of how Chrome works at the moment. And I don't want to inject that onto every page you go to on the internet. I don't want to slow down your user experience. So I do it only on /s/, which are communities, hopefully, and then anything that ends with .app or .cmp. A Lightning Out application could be on anything, right? And so what I need to do is I need to add the feature where the Lightning tab always shows, you click on Enable button, and I eject myself. So if you had the Lightning Out mapped to one of those URLs, you're good. If you're not yet. And I know that is one I need to get to. So I will make sure that's a priority. Thanks. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure. I'll see you next year.